I'm never staying home alone again. After lots of convincing my mom to leave me home alone in our apartment, she finally gave in. This was seriously amazing because this was the first time in like forever that she was leaving me home alone. After a traumatic event, she told me she would never leave me home alone ever again. I was devastated, but I could understand where she was coming from. It would have been the very first, but also last time she would have let me home alone. What happened was that I was watching something horror on my TV. You may be wondering why I would be watching something scary while I am home alone. Because I have little siblings and we live in a small apartment with one TV. We need to share it, and though I love horror and scary stuff, I can never watch when my siblings are home. Halfway into the movie, I heard my door open. My mom was home. She threw the door open and began frantically screaming my name in fear. I was shocked. My little sister and brother were not with her. When she saw me watching TV with no danger whatsoever, she calmed a bit down. She was about to break down crying. I thought something happened with my siblings, but that wasn't the case. "What's wrong, Mom?" I asked. My mom was shaking. "Why would you call me if nothing was happening with you?" I was so confused. I never called her. I only called her when I was going to get pizza for dinner. "You called me screaming and crying," she shouted. "That wasn't me, Mom," I shouted back. "Yes, it was you. It was your voice and everything." Confused, I asked what the person on the phone told her, sounding like me calling my number. "It was you. You were screaming and crying, banging on what sounded like a door. Everyone could hear you. I didn't even put you on speaker. That is how loud you screamed. You screamed like someone was stabbing you." I was so creeped out. Something called my mom pretending to be me. We still don't know an explanation. That is the reason why my mom never let me go home alone again. Until yesterday. I was ecstatic when my mom walked out the door. My siblings were at the fair with my father, and my mom went to a friend's house. I called my best friend and began FaceTiming with her for like 2 hours. Halfway through the call, I heard a loud banging on my door. I was stunned. This was not my dad and not my mom. I told my friend to mute herself while I went to look who that was. I looked through the peephole, but the hall was black and there was no one standing there. I was really confused. I told my friend that there was no one at the door and she could unmute herself. She did, and we talked for about 10 minutes when there was another knock, so subtle but so loud. I was so done with whoever was doing this prank with me. Again, I looked through the peephole, but there was no difference. Black hall with no one standing there. I thought it was my neighbor underneath me, not many years older than me, who I had beef with last summer. But would he? I was so creeped out, so I locked the door in case it was someone trying to break in. I returned to my room, still on the call with my friend. I sat down on my bed and we continued talking until I heard someone singing. It was a familiar song, Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes. It was as if someone was singing it while walking around my apartment. It had my voice, but it was distorted. My friend noticed my worried face and asked me what was wrong. "I hear someone singing," I answered. "What?" she asked. "Someone is singing and it's my voice," I said, with a serious tone. She giggled. "What song?" she asked jokingly. I knew she would laugh at this and think I was joking, but I still said, "Head, shoulders, knees, and toes." She burst out laughing. "Girl, you're hallucinating. Snap out of it." I laughed it off and I hung up because my friend wouldn't delete an ugly screenshot of me she took while we were FaceTiming. My other friend asked me if we could call, but that didn't last long because she had to go soon after. I am a Muslim, so when prayer time came, I put on my prayer clothes and started praying. Halfway through my prayer though, I felt someone tapping my shoulder. I couldn't turn around because then my prayer wouldn't be valid. I finished praying and turned around. As expected, no one was there. I was thinking that I was going crazy and had to get more sleep. Summer break ruined my sleep schedule. But still, I decided to send a snap to my closest friends where I told them all that happened. They all didn't take me seriously. I heard the sound of a coin falling in my living room. I also sent a snap about that to my friends. They all told me to go investigate. While I did that, I put on all the lights in my house. I went to check the living room and found a coin lying next to the carpet. It fell from nowhere. I started recording it and showed them that there was no way it could have fallen from a closet or something. There is nothing in the living room where it could have fallen from. I was creeped out by now. I went back to my room and sent the video to my friends. I also sent another video of me talking and explaining everything that has happened so far. They were laughing at me, and I found it pretty funny as well. Until one of my friends told me someone had just appeared behind the curtain I was sitting in front of. My bed is located next to my big balcony window. It's really big and you need like 3 curtains to cover it. I was about to start crying. The fear in the eyes of my friend showed clearly that she was not lying. Just then I heard more coins fall in the living room. I started recording but stayed silent. You could hear tapping from the window and more coins falling in the living room. But then everything went silent. Like 3 minutes of complete silence. After the 3 minutes, everything started again. The coins in the living room and the tapping on the window. My other friend asked me to look in the living room to see how many coins exactly fallen. I did and found like 23 coins. I returned to my room and was sending a voice message to my friend. Just then the balcony door flew open and I screamed. I began reciting everything I knew to protect me. I was about to call my mom when my dad opened the door with my siblings. My siblings came in excited and I had to pretend like everything was okay. Who would even believe this? I discovered someone living in the walls of my house, and they're not alone. A few weeks ago, I moved into a seemingly ordinary house, but what I've uncovered is anything but ordinary. I think someone is living within the walls of my home. It all began innocently enough, with subtle, unexplainable noises that I tried to brush off as the house settling or the wind outside. But as the days passed, those noises grew more persistent, more eerie. Late at night, I'd hear faint whispering, like a clandestine conversation just beyond the drywall. One evening, curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to investigate. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of dread, I began knocking on the walls to locate the source of the sounds. That's when I stumbled upon a loose panel in the basement. It led to a narrow, dark passage. I had to know what was hidden within. Crawling through the cramped space, my heart pounding, I reached a small chamber where dim candlelight flickered. There, I found a makeshift bed, old photographs, and eerie drawings on the walls. It was clear that someone had been living here, in my house, undetected for who knows how long. The walls were adorned with names and dates, all pointing to a single conclusion: this secret occupant wasn't alone. They had companions, and the most chilling part was that some of those dates were recent, suggesting others had ventured into these walls but never returned. My blood ran cold as I heard footsteps approaching the entrance to the passage. Panicked, I retreated back to the basement, sealed the panel, and tried to pretend that what I'd seen and heard didn't exist. But the whispering continued, growing louder and more sinister. I can't escape the feeling that I'm being watched, that there are eyes on me even when I'm alone. I don't know who these hidden occupants are, what they want, or what secrets lie within the walls of my house. I'm trapped here, Reddit, and I fear that the presence lurking in the dark may not be content to stay hidden much longer. Please, help me. If you hear voices while home alone, run. I was at home. My parents went out to, ironically, get milk and other things, of course. I suddenly heard laughing coming deep from my closet. I thought it was my little sister trying to scare me, so I called out, "Scarlett, I've told you countless times that your tricks don't work on me anymore." I suddenly got a text from my parents. It said, "Your sister is helping us get the groceries so we can get home quickly." My blood ran cold. I quickly scanned the area as I heard it again. "Come on, Chester, I want to play with you in the closet." I quickly jumped out of the bed and ran as fast as I could. I heard a blood-curdling scream as a bang came from my closet. It was chasing me. My heart pounded as each step hurt my chest. It felt like I was about to throw up. I reached my neighbor's house and banged on the door. They opened the door with worried looks on their faces. I explained everything as fast as I could and they called the cops. The cops arrived and found a naked man in my closet. While they walked out with the man looked at me, and his facial expression is something that will haunt my dreams for the rest of my life. He smiled at me with an almost ear-to-ear smile and mouthed the words, "Good decision," as they put him in the car. I always sleep with a night light and never stay home alone. One thing always keeps me up at night though. What would have happened if I chose to open the closet door? What's the scariest home alone story? My scariest home alone stories happened during one of the first times I was left alone as a teenager. I was left alone at home on a random Sunday when my parents brought my brother to some event. I loved the freedom and everything was going great until I decided to leave my house to see my friend. My parents specifically told me not to leave the house, and I did anyway. Not thinking at the moment, I left my house and I completely forgot to lock the door. I came home hours later and I had a terrible gut feeling. Something felt weird and I noticed that cabinets were left open and stuff was scrambled around the house. I began to become very startled, but I didn't completely believe that someone was there because it was so quiet. I started shouting throughout the house to see if anybody was there. There was no answer. I started to feel better until my phone started ringing. I looked down and it was an unknown ID. Looking for attention, I answered the phone and I heard deep and heavy breathing. I started to get extremely scared. It felt straight out of a movie. I kept asking, "Who is this?" repeatedly. The phone hung up. 2 minutes later, I got another call and I answered with deep breathing. It sounded like an angry voice and I started to become impatient that they weren't saying anything. They hum again and I got aggravated. I got another call from the unknown ID, and the breathing started again. Out of nowhere, I heard a deep and quiet voice whisper, "I'm in the house." My heart stopped and chills ran down my spine. I'd never been so scared in my life, but I acted tough thinking it was a prank call from my friend or brother knowing I was home alone. The caller hung up this time, and I started to hear creaking from upstairs, and suddenly I heard loud footsteps. Luckily, I heard something drop before he started sprinting downstairs. I was able to get a head start on the intruder, and I disappeared into the woods and immediately called the cops. The cops reported and found the door left wide open. They never found the person that snuck in, but I'm lucky to be able to share that wild story. My uncle. 3 gangsters and me. When I was 22, my uncle showed up at my small 1-bedroom bungalow. As always, every time any of my 4 uncles showed up, my heart sank. To say that BV was messed up would have been the understatement of the year. He has always been a dodgy character, but the uncle I have the strongest relationship with out of the 4, personally for me the best of a bad bunch, and that's scraping the barrel. He, like the other 3, was a criminal at that point and associated with some pretty unsavory people. There was nothing new about that. None of the rest of the family has broken the law. My granda was a long-service soldier and a hard-working family man. Likewise, Gran gave birth to 9 babies, and in between those times had very responsible P got a job in London. Their 5 daughters, although not having easy lives, and having their troubles and tragedies, have all managed to grow up in the same house without breaking the law in any way, all supporting themselves and their children by maintaining, again, very good, responsible jobs whilst raising us, their children, to all, in one way or another, be high achievers and good people with strong moral compasses. Back to BV, he had been up to no good, as he was paranoid, jittery, and on edge. He was also using it in a big way. I called my mom and she came around. I told BV he could stay the weekend, with 2 conditions. No stolen goods and no drugs. He agreed a little reluctantly and settled down. Mom decided to stay too in case it went pear-shaped. It did. The next day was Friday and my day off work. BV went out early. It was a lazy day. I was just doing a bit of tidying up. I was cleaning around a massive pot plant and stuff down inside it found a huge bag of suspect-looking white powder, which didn't look for personal use, various nasty-looking weapons, and several nice-looking pieces of jewelry. I was very narked off, to say the least, but after showing Mom I left the dubious stuff where it was, as I needed time to think about what I should do. When BV got back from wherever it was he went, I asked about the items. He lied, as usual, saying that he had down a job, legal of course, for an old friend, and that was his payment. I told him straight out I didn't believe a word he had told me, and that I wanted him and his stuff out first thing in the morning. The next day Mom and I got up and noticed BV was gone. I looked for the stuff and saw it was still there. Mom had to work that morning. She told me she'd be straight home after, and I settled down for a quiet, chilled morning. Around 11 o'clock a.m., there was a loud knock on the door, followed by someone having fun with the buzzer. As I use a wheelchair, it takes me a bit of time to get to my front door if I'm alone, so I was getting more and more annoyed by the incessant commotion. On opening the door, I came face to face with the 3 of the meanest, nastiest, and skankiest men I have ever seen. They all looked straight ahead, and because I was at a lower level, their eyes went down to meet mine. To be fair, they all seemed surprised by my appearance. I was very small and skinny and looked more like 14 than 22. They all looked at each other in utter shock before I said, "Hello, can I help you?" The middle gangster, the nastiest looking one, said, "We're looking BV, sweetheart. Is he around?" One of the others said he was staying with a girl, my name. I was bricking inside, but the sheer audacity of my uncle made anger take over my fear and made me braver. I said, "No, he's not around, he's gone, he won't be back, and that's me. I'm his niece." The three thugs looked uncomfortable and shuffled, looking at each other. I said, "Well, he has something of ours. Do you know where it could be?" The middle mean one asked. "Yeah, I'll get it for you. Wait there." I told the three of them and shut the door on them. As I did, I heard one of them saying, "That's low even for BV. You see her? She's a kid in a wheelchair." When I got back with their belongings, I shoved it at the meanest one and said, "When you do see BV again, tell him from me if he even thinks about coming here again, I'll call the police, and that goes for you too." The mean one said, "He had our stuff, we had to get it back." I said, still blagging, "That's fine. I'm just saying what I will do." The three thugs nodded and left hurriedly. After they left, I was shaking all over. I was really scared and upset. When Mom got home, I told her about the incident. She went ape. I know that at a later date, she saw her brother and threatened him with something nasty if he ever came near me or brought his criminal scumbag mates around me again, and to give his due, he never has. Are your parents home? I was 15 when this happened. I was at home for a while, and then my mom said that I would be home alone and that I could have the whole house to myself. I said okay, and she left. A while later, it was around 7 o'clock, and it was during the winter, so it got dark pretty fast. Then suddenly, I heard a knock at the door. I thought this was strange because my mom would usually let me know when she was coming home. I got paranoid, and I was smart at that time, so before I answered the door, I went into the bathroom, turned on the shower, played some music in the bathroom, put the chain on the door, and then answered the door. I opened it, and a man was standing outside on the porch. I said hello, and he replied, "Hello, young man, is your parents home?" Like I said before, I was smart at that time, so I said, "Yeah, my mom's in the shower right now," and he said, "Okay, young man, good night and stay safe." I closed the door and locked the door and sat on the couch and said, that guy was kind of friendly, but also weird at the same time. He was in his late 30s. He wore a black suit and pants, and he had blonde hair and dark circles under his eyes like he never slept. A while later, I was sitting on the couch watching Sinister while eating ice cream when and heard another knock on the door. I put on the chain, and I'm glad I did, because when I opened the door, someone pushed it, but thank God I put the chain on the door. I looked to see who it was, and I almost shit my pants. Through the crack of the door was the same man again, and he said, "Oh hey, I just wanted to make sure you were okay." I said, "I'm fine, thank you." I shut the door and locked it. I heard the man walk away, and I was pretty freaked out, but I calmed down and watched the movie. But then I heard a tap on the window. I looked, and there he was looking into the window. I screamed and shut the blinds and shouted, "Leave me the fuck alone," and he began to bang on the door and shouted, "Let me in, you little shit." I ran into the restroom with my phone and locked the door and called my mom. I explained to her the situation and she said that she would be there right away. After a while, the banging stopped and the man ran away. I got a text from my mom saying that she was home. We called the police, but they never found the man, so I went to bed. The next morning I woke up and pulled up the blinds, but when I did, there was a note taped to my window, and on the note were 4 words that will haunt me to this day. Are your parents home? I was home alone. I'm 17 with a very terrible sleeping schedule, so I usually never pay attention to the time, just do what I usually do all day and sleep whenever. Recently fired from my job, I pay attention to school and just play games when I'm free. I never knew when my brother or mother left, either for work or something else. I heard my name called by my mother, Noah. I didn't think anything of it, so I figured that she never left. She works until 5 p.m., and it is about 2:30. She is usually on her break, and my brother is either playing games or is out fishing. When I went into her room, she was sitting at her desk, on her computer like usual, and she said, "How are you doing? Will you go check on your brother?" That question threw me off because me and my brother don't have the best relationship. But I did anyway, not thinking anything of it. I walk into my brother's room to find him sleeping. It's not normal for him to be sleeping, so I shake him with my foot and ask if he's doing all right. He responds with, "Yeah, I'm good." I say okay, and walk back to my room. I yell back to my mom, "He's doing fine." I play my games for a while, and when I hear my phone go off, I answer it. And it's my mom. I think to myself, it's been roughly 20 minutes since I talked to her last. What does she need now? She called to tell me that she had been out running to different stores with my brother for a few hours and wanted to know what I wanted for dinner tonight. I asked her, "So was that not you or Gabe that I talked to just a few minutes ago?" She replies with, "No." "Are you okay?" I was in immediate shock. Too scared to even move or say anything. After a few seconds, I locked my door and got my window ready to jump out of. Not even 2 seconds later do I hear scratching and banging and hear my name screaming out of this thing that sounds like my mom. "Noah! Noah! Noah!" I disregard the bug screen on the window and go headfirst into a semi-dead bush outside my window, make a bolt for my neighbor's apartment just across the street and dial 911. They show up and find nothing in the apartment, and my mom says that nothing has been touched or moved since she left hours before. This was only a week ago, and I don't think I will ever get over this. Now that I look back at it more, I realize that my brother didn't have a face, and my mom's face was blacked out, with almost deathly black eyes. Truly frightening. Extra info: I live in a 1-story apartment with my mother and brother. My brother lives in the dining room, my mother has the master bedroom, and I have the smaller room, but it's just about as big as the bedroom. I have one window on the back wall, and my brother's room is blocked by a hanging curtain. This is a true story, and I wish it wasn't. Home alone. As I tell this story, I'm home alone as I once was. It took me many years to feel comfortable being home alone again after the terrible experience I am about to tell you. On a windy, bone-chilling Sunday night in mid-January, I was grabbing some clean clothes from my bedroom. The day was long, and I spent it with my friends out on the trails. I was finally ready to take a shower and head to bed for an early start the next morning. I finally walked into the bathroom, turning on the overhead light and ventilation fan. I put my clothes on the nearby table and turned to look at myself in the mirror. I stood there looking for a few seconds until I grabbed my phone and turned on the bathroom speaker. My favorite music artist released a new album on this day. So I thought it would be best to listen to it while taking a shower. I enjoyed the first song. It was very upbeat and I couldn't help but dance. I stopped, looked over at the open bathroom door, which had a clear view of the front door, and saw it was unlocked. I walked over to lock it again, really confused as I thought I locked it moments before. I peeked through the blinds and went back to the bathroom, closing the door behind me. As I started to brush my teeth and take off my shirt, I got a sudden feeling of unease. I turned my music down so I could hear when my mother came home. I took a quick shower and was already in front of the fogged-up mirror, brushing my wet hair back. I heard a door creak open in the distance. I thought nothing of it, as I thought it was my mother. I threw my dirty laundry in the washer and walked out of the bathroom, my music still playing. I stood at the open bathroom door and glanced over at my mother's bedroom door, the door fully closed. The moment I noticed that, I stepped back into the bathroom, concerned. I noticed that my mother's car keys weren't at the front door, where she always kept them, and the fact my mother's bedroom door was now closed. I knew she never closed it. She always kept it open so she could hear what was happening in the house. I closed the bathroom door and grabbed my phone, opening my messages. I quickly typed to my mother, "Are you home, Mom?" A few seconds later she replied, "No, honey, I'll be home a few hours late. I have a few more things to do." I stood there holding my breath for moments. She once again messaged, "Is there something wrong, dear?" I typed to her, "Someone is in the house, someone is here." When I finished typing, I heard the sound of the door opening again. I looked over to my right and saw a closet. I opened it slowly and stepped inside. I crouched inside and held my breath. My mother messaged back, "Honey, I called the police. Hide and stay safe. I'm on my way home." I sat there holding my breath for what felt like hours. I started to hear the sound of my heart beating in my head. It got louder and louder, until the sound of the bathroom door slowly opening. Someone slowly stepped in. I covered my mouth and waited it out. I could hear the raspy sound of the intruder breathing. He stood there, breathing for minutes, until he turned off the bathroom light and walked out. I sat there, feeling a little safer, until I realized that I didn't hear him walk away. He was still in the bathroom, waiting for me to come out of hiding. I sat there in horror. I heard the sound of breathing once again, slowly getting closer. I curled up tighter, my heart beating so loud that it could give away my position. It went quiet. To quote, "The silence was finally broken by the sound of the police banging on the door and the intruder running out of the bathroom. I heard a loud crash, then nothing. I heard my mom call my name and I called back. I fell out of the closet and saw my mother. I ran up to her and hugged her tightly. Days later, I was told that the intruder was a crazy person who broke out of prison just days before the incident. He was in prison for murder. 5 kids home alone and the guy is on the roof. Okay, so bear with me. This happened when I was a kid and I double-checked the story with my family. So this was in the mid-80s. I was about 7 at home with 2 of my older sisters, 8 and 11-ish, and 2 cousins, 7 and 8-ish. All 5 girls. My sister, 11, was in charge of babysitting us 4 younger girls. You have to picture what our house looked like to understand what happened. It was a 2-story box house with a flat roof and a small box front porch, also with a flat roof. I can't remember what we were doing, but we were all in the house. We kept hearing noises coming from the roof like walking and what sounded like rocks being dropped down the downspouts. You know, kids, we thought of a squirrel or something. But it kept happening. Then my older sister said something about how maybe someone climbed the huge tree beside the house and got on the roof. We were all scared because we knew there was a roof access point in the bedroom that I shared with one of my sisters. What if he could get inside? My oldest sister told my other sister and one of our cousins to walk across the street to the corner store, across an empty gravel parking lot, and on the way back, look up and see if they could see someone on the roof. So the girls, both about 8 years old, walk one halfway across the parking lot and, being curious kids, turn around, look up, and see a guy in one of those totally 80s guys crop top football jerseys, think Johnny Depp in A Nightmare on Elm Street. He was couched down on the roof. The girls came running home freaking out and told my older sister about the guy. My older sister, freaking out, first went to the neighbor's house to use their deck to see if she could see on our roof, but couldn't see anything. She came home and then called the police. It felt like it took them ages to show up. When they got there, I don't think they believed a word we said. They thought a bunch of little kids were making up this story for attention. One cop drove down the road, up a hill about a block away, to see if they could see anything, but the way the roof was, you couldn't see a person if they were laying. Then these cops tell us kids that we had to go upstairs and check everywhere to see if we found anyone. 5 little girls from ages 7 to 11 were sent upstairs, scared shitless, crying, to look for this man, knowing about the roof access. We all cried, not wanting to go, but they said we had to. To this day I remember how scared I was. I remember looking, but how well do little kids look, right? The cops didn't listen to us, didn't check out the house, inside or out, and left. We were so scared to be left home with the guy out there, who knows where. We didn't know if he was just lying down on the roof or jumped down or somehow got in and was hiding. My mom finally got home a few hours later and we told her what happened. My mom explained to us that there was a lock on the roof access and no one could get in, but she checked anyway. Then went to check out the outside. There were clear footprints in the dirt, dug in good from him jumping off the roof, onto the porch, and off into the flower bed. Oh, my mom was so steaming mad when she realized we told the truth and weren't believed by the police. We went to the police station the next day and we were all separated and interviewed. We all told the same story. My mom went up one side of the cops and down the other. We never found out who the guy was or why he was there. Did he know it was a house with 5 little girls home alone? I never staying home alone again. When I was 8 years old, my parents, for the first time, allowed my brother Josh and me to stay home alone while they went grocery shopping. I remember the sky getting black as the overcast clouds came rolling in with loud, booming thunderclaps. I was always afraid of storms at that age, so after they left, I closed all the blinds and turned on the TV full blast. "You're such a coward," he professed. "I'm gonna tell Dad how much of a scaredy cat his son is." "Shut up, idiot. At least I don't still wet the bed." Soon, a torrential downpour began battering the house as leaves swirled and trees bent so far as to nearly point downward. I'll never forget it. Back in the 80s, Micro Machines were a hot commodity toy for kids my age. The commercial depicted the world's fastest speaking man blathering rapid-fire speech throughout. During the commercial, the storm temporarily knocked out power, and then the screen came back on. Severe thunderstorm warning for Allegheny County, followed by a black screen with the words, "Now back to our regularly scheduled programming. There's going to be a tornado, and we're gonna die. Just like old man Rafferty's farmhouse when the roof blew off last year. Stop trying to scare me, or I'll tell Dad." And then something happened that caught my eye. It was indistinguishable. On the TV was an admittedly odd film. A camera focused unmoving on a cemetery and nothing more, with statuesque, familiar-looking tombstones erect amid a violent storm. The camera didn't present different angles. No panning, no editing, no experimenting with angles. There was no narrative or plot. No characters. Just a cemetery. "Josh, look at the TV." "What about it?" "The cemetery." "It looks, I don't know." "Brian, it's just a dumb horror movie." The camera was pointing at a gravestone ahead of a freshly dug grave of recently poured dirt. And then it began to stir and move before a long, frail gray hand ascended from the mud dressed in black with a white button-up shirt under. And then another, reaching upward, grabbing a hold of the gravestone. Thriller maybe? No, Bree. Thriller starts with Michael Jackson turning into a werewolf. "Josh, seriously look. Doesn't that look like the cemetery down the street?" He tossed his Rubik's Cube to the floor with an annoyed disposition, sat forward with his elbows on his knees, and rested his chin on his hands while squinting into the television. When Josh squinted, it always signified that he was taking something seriously. "You know, you little twerp, I agree with you." His brows now furrowed with curiosity and dread. "No, Bree. It's just a movie. It's obvious." "Then where's the music? Actors? WH dash." And then a pale, rotting cadaver of a man with half of the skin melted away from his endoskeletal head pulled himself out of the ground, wailing and moaning. Suddenly, a violent crash of lightning audibly struck a tree on the TV at the same time it hit outside. "Josh, I'm scared. This can't be." In the background, more bodies all dressed in suits and dresses began to pull themselves out of the soil, lurching and stumbling around, walking into one another, some falling over, not once breaking the fourth wall into the camera. It has to be a joke. I've seen movie zombies, but these corpses just seemed far too authentic. Blood running black. Deep blue hematoma bruises on the temples, skin gray and pale. Cataract white eyes just enough to barely distinguish the pupils. They began walking in front of and rubbing up against the camera lens. Each strike of lightning and rumble of thunder outside uncannily correlated with what was happening in this disturbing movie. "Josh, look. They're all gone." Now it was only a first-person POV of empty holes and gravestones. Far in the background was another familiar landmark, the highway. We lived just on the other side. Finally, something occurred that convinced both of us that we were living in nightmares. Fire trucks sped past the graveyard down Main Street at the same time they passed our neighborhood, just beyond the property line of our backyard. Josh. My big brother could see the pleading in my eyes. Please protect me. 3 words are being spoken without being said aloud. Brian, we need to lock the doors. But I was petrified. Frozen in place, I had dissociated from my present state of consciousness, inadvertently focusing on a fallen corsage on the TV screen. The storm was hitting hard now. All I could do was watch out of my peripherals as Josh raced back and forth throughout the house, locking doors. But then something shook me out of my trance. Mom and Dad. Josh, what about Mom and Dad? What if they're in danger? A parade of speeding police cars sounded out in the close distance. Suddenly, the focal point of this movie switched from the cemetery to the woods dividing our neighborhood and the one behind us. There must have been 3 dozen walking corpses stumbling and traipsing down our trail, straight in the direction of our house. The wind gusts so forceful that the zombies begin to trip over themselves and fall to the ground. But of course, they stood right back up and pressed on without distraction on their present warpath. Look outside, Josh. Please. No. They can't know we're in here. What are we gonna do? I don't know, Brian. Just keep watching. And the camera angle switched one last time to the back of our house. Josh. Just peek out the kitchen window. It's our house. But he still refused to believe it. Brian, there's no way this is real. Then it's a prank. But we won't know until you move aside the curtain. The fear in his eyes was running visibly deep. He just didn't want to confirm the worst, but then he said it. Okay. Just keep your eyes on the screen. He raced to the window and gently pulled aside the curtain. And then let go almost instantly, letting out an audibly horrified gasp. I could tell how frightened he was by the simple fact that he slowly backed away rather than turning around. And on the TV screen, well, neither of us had to say anything. Our silence was confirmation enough. Brian, he whispered, don't make the sound. My heart rate jacked, veins flooded and pulsated with adrenaline. An absolute out-of-body experience. Boom. Thud. The foundation of the house shook as Josh backed up to the living room couch. And then we saw the shadows seeping in through the kitchen window and moving about directly behind us through the bay windows. We were surrounded. Door handles jiggling. Fists pounding. Moans and howls lamenting the plight of the recently deceased. Josh, did you see the camera? Mom and Dad was all he could muster, followed by one other thing to turn it off. No more light, no more sound. And then we go and hide. What about our parents? I don't know, Brian. I don't know. Standing next to the TV, Josh reached down and ripped the plug from the wall. And at that moment, the front door began to click, and it swung open. I screamed at the top of my lungs, buried my face in my arms, and began to sob. We were dead. That is until a familiar falsetto voice rang out. Brian, are you scaring your brother again? Mom, standing in the doorway with armfuls of groceries, closing up her umbrella. Damn it, Joshua. See? I knew it was a bad idea to leave you two alone. The shadows disappeared, and when Dad finally plugged the TV back in, Night of the Living Dead was airing. Of all the fucking movies. Dad, did you guys see any? What? Never mind. Josh and I never spoke of it again, except to each other. Of course, you'd imagine we'd wonder aloud to ourselves whether or not those things took place, but after something our dad asked us that evening, we knew we were right, guys. Why would you be playing outside in the rain? What do you mean? Asked Josh anxiously. The jig is up, Josh. Both of your muddy handprints are all over the side of the house. Josh and I could only share a horrified glance before Dad said one more thing. Your mother was right. It was a bad idea to leave you two home alone. We weren't alone that night. Me and my family live near the Appalachian Mountain Range in Virginia. My father is a very outdoorsy man. While I don't totally like all the stuff he does, like camping, one day he still took me camping. My father was around 45 at the time and was a pretty built guy. He was about 6 feet 2 inches to 6 feet 3 inches and lifted weights regularly. He had been raised on a farm, so he had always been outdoors. I did go hunting with him a few times, so I knew my way around the woods pretty well. This was supposed to be a hunting trip where we would hunt during the day and then camp at night. After a day of hiking out to the spot, which took about 2 hours, setting up and hunting, we were both ready to fall asleep. My dad likes to whistle when he falls asleep, and it also helps me fall asleep. Right before I fell asleep, I heard a very strange sound and woke up. My father was still awake, so I asked him what it was. Since he had grown up outdoors and was always outdoors, he knew how every animal sounded no matter what the call was, so he told me what it was. Turns out it was a coyote. After that, I fell asleep but was shaken awake by my father after I didn't know how long. He had a very panicked look on his face as he said we needed to get out of there. I was confused until I heard it. It was a blood-curdling scream coming from somewhere beyond the tree line, where we couldn't see. I asked my father if we should help them since they sounded like they needed help, but he ignored my question. I kept on asking questions about what it was till he looked at me and whispered, "In my 45 years on this earth, I've never heard that noise before." This made me scared, since if anyone knew what an animal sounded like, it would be him. Eventually, we packed everything up, and as we went to pack up the tent, we heard the scream again, but this time much closer. I looked towards the tree and saw a tall figure, looked maybe 6 feet 9 inches to 6 feet 11 inches, staring at us. I guess my father saw it too, because he grabbed my arm and just said, "Let's go." I was paralyzed with fear at this point, but eventually snapped out of it. I grabbed my bag and followed my father back to the car. It was about a 5-mile walk back. Though the whole first mile it kept on screaming as we went, and it was getting closer. If we sped up, it sped up. If we slowed down, it slowed down. At about mile 3, I heard a scream again, but this time it was different. It sounded louder and with more urgency. My dad must have noticed this too, because he started jogging. I tried my best to keep up, but my dad was in peak shape and I wasn't very fit. My dad stopped with about a mile to go to catch his breath, but at this point, I had no energy and didn't think I could make it. Just as I was thinking that, I heard another scream, but this one was way too close. It sounded like it had come from about 10 feet away, and it made my ears ring. This gave me a new boost as I started sprinting to the car. Eventually, I saw the tail lights of the car. My dad passed me at that moment and opened the passenger door as I jumped in, and he got in the driver's seat. Before I could even process what was happening, he sped off. As I was catching my breath in the car, I heard one final scream. This one was so loud it made my ears ring while in the car. My father didn't even look back, he just sped up. Eventually, we made it back home. We never told our family about this, and sometimes I asked my father what it was, and to this day he says he doesn't know.